Thank you very much for that, and we'll see you for more in half an hour. Thanks.
Let's see, time now is 14 minutes past 8. The number of young people in England who've been admitted to hospital with an eating disorder has risen sharply during the pandemic, with charities calling the NHS figures deeply worrying.
Let's take a look. There were more than 3,200 hospital admissions in England for the under-20s between April 2020 and March this year, and that compares to more than 2,000 the year before. So you're looking at a rise of around 50%.
There has also been an increase in demand for specialist community-based services. More than 3,000 monthly referrals, up from just over 2,000 before the pandemic.
Now, around half of young people referred are still waiting for treatment. And Jane McCubbin has been to meet one family which has struggled to cope during lockdown when a daughter in the family developed anorexia.
She just wouldn't eat. She just would not eat. You feel you can't win. It's like your child's been taken as a hostage. You're seeing your child die slowly in front of you. I want my child to eat. How can I make my child eat? You just felt like you were having to just wait until your child got so ill that they were literally about to die before anything would be done.
Hannah's descent into anorexia began at the start of lockdown Mark 1. For many young people, the pandemic provided a perfect storm. Isolation, separation, anxiety, and for an increasing number, an eating disorder.
She was due to do her GCSEs. All of a sudden, of course, that didn't happen. And she had time on her hands.
And we couldn't really meet up with friends, so it was literally just in the house. I thought, I've got all this time to kill, why not try and change what I didn't like about myself? So I started this programme, working out more.
She had nothing else to occupy her mind, so this had become her whole thing.
And then I started to cut out carbs, doing more workouts. I wasn't really me anymore.
Every now and again you'd see a glimmer of Hannah in there, but most of the time you were dealing with this other entity that had taken her over. It's so strong. It's such a strong illness. Take the lid off of that.
The number of under-20s admitted to hospital with an eating disorder rose by nearly 50% between April 2020 and March this year, while the figure for over 20s remained almost exactly the same. Fortunately for Hannah and Lisa, they had somewhere to turn.
There was one woman who was really there for you.
Yeah, which was Marg Oaten, yeah, from Seed. Yeah, she was brilliant.
It's so nice to meet you both.
Marg and husband Dennis set up an eating disorder charity after seeing their own daughter struggle. Through lockdown, they've offered advice by email or video call, but today we've arranged a surprise.
You don't normally get to do this, do you?
We certainly do.
Meet the people you help in person.
It's quite special for us as well.
Today, they're coming face to face with the family who believes their advice saved their daughter's life.
I know they are eager to thank you, but they think they're thanking you over Zoom, so this is going to be something else. Thank you for doing this.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. We've got somebody to see you.
we've come to Zoom you in person.
Oh, I wish I could hug you.
You can do what you want.
You're such tricksters.
Have a seat.
The last time we saw you on the Zoom, you was in the hospital.
It was, yeah.
It was heartbreaking for us, because we'd been there. You know, we'd been there and we knew what you was going through.
As COVID hit, inpatient beds were at a premium just when they were needed most. This is some of the very last email exchanges between Lisa and Marg in the days before Hannah was finally admitted to hospital to access help.
3rd of Jan 2021.
She said she's restricting all her food now and has been for a while.
And we are hoping and praying for admission to hospital, but we know COVID has affected admissions enormously. I'm very fearful.
Is she having palpitations, slurring her words? Is she vacant? If her core body temperature is low or less than 36, then call an ambulance. Please don't wait for an appointment.
I've told her to tell me the minute she feels unwell.
Has she had any pain in her kidneys? Rapid weight loss is the risk.
Last week, she lost the most weight than she's ever lost. Here's keeping everything crossed they can admit her in the next few days.
I am not sharing this info to frighten you, but to keep you aware, please keep safe.
We brought Hannah to our A&E last night. Her blood pressure and heart rate dropped dramatically and the crisis team moved in.
And I will, thank God, thank the Lord, she's in the right place now.
And she was.
And she was, and I think that's... Oh, so sorry for getting emotional. This is happening across the board, and we have so many of these emails, so many, and more has got to be done.
Do you want me to turn the carrots as well?
Yeah, it's garlic.
Today, Hannah at least is in a good place.
Do you feel like you've really turned a corner now?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You've got your girl back?
Oh, the minute she came back, it was amazing. Yeah. Things are good.
I'm really good right now.
There is hope, isn't there?
There is always hope.
Yeah, there is. You're proof.
Yeah.
So our thanks, as always, to Hannah and Lisa and all the family who agreed to tell the stories for us now. Gemma Oaten is with us this morning. So, Gemma, apart from anything else, very proud daughter, because we just saw your mum and dad there who, you know, because of what happened to you and your story, because you had anorexia. And I'm just thinking, I'm sure you and your mum and dad would say that they're not the point of a story like that. The point is to help someone, isn't it?
Yeah,
but you must be very proud of the work they've done because they saw what happened to you and how it felt with your family.
Yeah, I mean, we always say at Seed we're a group of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, but sadly, those extraordinary things come from a place of pain, and all too often we are seeing more and more stories like this where families, loved ones, sufferers are coming to us in crisis at the point of, you know, nearly dying, and it's down to a tiny charity like us to make sure that they don't go down that path, and more needs to be done.
Can I ask you, Gemma, now, your sort of story with anorexia started when you were 10, so it's been a very long time. When you hear those statistics and you hear that a young person is being hospitalised, now, that presumably, for someone to get to that position, that's someone who is in a very difficult situation. I mean, that is on a sort of scale. Where is that in terms of how ill they are?
Early intervention is so key, and where we are completely going wrong around the conversation in eating disorders is that we are constantly judging an eating disorder based on a physical and medical health, but it's a mental health illness. So early intervention is key, and when somebody goes to a doctor and says, I need help, I'm struggling, and they get turned away because they're not low enough in weight, and then cut to they're in crisis and on the deathbed, that's wrong. And that's the story that happened to us 27 years ago. And it really is so frustrating that still today there are families and human beings, not just statistics, going through this day in, day out.
And you say this happened to you, your family 27 years ago. You were 10 and you were taken to the doctor because it had been noted you weren't eating well, you had an odd relationship or a not normal relationship with food. And the doctor said, well, her weight seems OK.
Yeah. And they couldn't do anything about it. And until I got to a certain weight, then I couldn't get treatment. And this is where the whole narrative's
Surely that's changed.
wrong.
Surely we know now, don't we? That, you know,
we talk
it's not,
about it.
and we don't, and we deliberately never talk about. I would never ask you. We would never ask you how little did you weigh. We would never talk about weight like that because we know that, you know, how that can affect people. But it's about where people are mentally and in terms of emotional stability, particularly now during the pandemic with young people.
We know. But unfortunately, that knowledge is not cutting through down to the NHS and CAMS and referrals and waiting lists. We continually talk about this, Naga, and honestly, it's got to come to a point where change comes. Wherever this BMI threshold comes from, where somebody has to get to a certain weight, low weight, to give them treatment is completely wrong. Eating disorders are so broad on the spectrum of bulimia, of OSFED, of ARFID, of binge eating disorder, all of these disorders that aren't spoken about. Anorexia only represents 10% of all eating disorders, and people are nearly dying. I lost a friend. We spoke on Radio 5 Live about Nicky Graham. You know, Trevor Phillips lost his daughter. Like, people are dying, and We've seen a 400% increase in new referrals this year already, and we've seen a 700% increase in carers coming to us, a small charity who has little manpower, hardly any resource, but is trying to make a change. What we need is to all come together and start to change the narrative, because honestly, we can't just keep talking and saying, well, the conversation's happening and we understand it needs to be bigger than that and it needs to be more.
Gemma, how's the pandemic played in? Because this rise in numbers has happened during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So what's the tie-in between those two things? What's happened?
I think it's a factor of things, Charles. I think it's to do with not being able to access the services as readily as we normally would. It is absolutely, it's not pointing fingers at the NHS, but they are under extreme pressure. I understand that with COVID. But this is another epidemic after the pandemic. But also an eating disorder is a mental health illness based around control. You take away people's control in their lives and not knowing when they're going to school, not knowing how they're going to keep a roof over their head, not knowing if they can work. And that plays havoc. But an eating disorder thrives off that. You know, it's such an intricate and complex mental health illness, and more needs to be done with the understanding, especially from the powers that be, going to government level. And I wish I could get in a room with Boris and really talk to him about the obesity strategy that he has in place and all of the other ramifications on the idea of focusing on the physical when we must address the mental health.
Why, and this is something I ask of many charities, there are many charities who are working to combat this or to help.
Yeah.
What is the problem? What's holding them back from getting all together and galvanising as one force?
Well, actually, we're already starting to do that.
Oh, right,
we're starting an eating disorder alliance. We've been speaking with SWEDA, with SIDA, with First Steps, with SupportEd, so many wonderful, wonderful smaller charities around the UK, and we are collaborating together at the moment to see if we can make a change together.
How important is it, do you think, that there are personalities like yourself, you're an actor, you know, you've been seen when you've been working and you've been very high profile talking about this, to talk about the devastating impacts this can have? And you, 3 years ago, suffered a miscarriage, and you put that on social media, and just to show this is what this can do to the body, because it's not just the immediate impact this has, it has lifelong effects. And you're not just talking about what happened to you when you were 10 and what you've lived with, it's how it affects you as an adult now. How important is that?
It's so important, okay? It's so important that we really start to unpick and understand the long-term ramifications of an eating disorder.
And also that it's not just happening to someone over there.
Yeah, and you know what? You bring up the post I did yesterday, and the response to that was incredible. You know, in a hopeful way, people saying thank you, I don't feel alone, but also in a way that this was accepted. You know, we need to talk about the bigger picture of the fact that not only are people getting to a point where they're losing their life, if they get better, which I pray they do, and I did, there's still a point where I might not be able to give life to another human being. And that's a lot, you know? And I don't want people to go through that pain to understand that they need to reach out to get help, and that's what that post was about.
Gemma, can I just ask you a last thought? There might be someone watching at home, and it could be a family member who's anxious about something they think they're seeing in their loved one.
Yeah.
It could be a young person who hasn't yet said anything about what they think is maybe going on.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's difficult territory, isn't it?
Yeah.
To say something, say the right thing, not make something worse.
Yeah. I think we need to make sure that, my advice is, please don't bury your head in the sand, because conversation is key. Be mindful and kind and caring with your approach, but don't ignore it, because early intervention is so important. There are wonderful charities out there like SEED. We also have an eating disorder educational toolkit that we're getting into schools around the UK to make sure, to your point, that this conversation becomes normalised, so that we're not walking on eggshells constantly. And I just pray that this conversation continues and we keep getting these resources in schools, but also that parents, carers, loved ones, everyone knows that this is a thing. It happens. And by ignoring it and waiting for the weight to change, we're not going to change what's already there. We can save lives.
Lovely to see you here today, and your mum and dad are clearly doing fantastic work, which I know goes on. So lovely to see you.
Thanks, Gemma.
Thank you for having me.